Welcome, church family, to our Friday night moments with Pastor and Marie. And again, welcome to Pastor David and Marie. It's always good having you guys joining us. And how's your week been?
It's been busy. It's been busy.
A kind of a new busy, would you say?
Yeah, I think it's busy in the sense of so many things that we have to do to keep ourselves, I guess, in some kind of order. Because I have little things here, little things there, and so we're just keeping busy in a different kind of way lately. So yeah, we've been busy. I'm preparing to go. I have places I'm going to be going to minister. So part of it is my busyness is starting to look forward to and look towards going off to St. George, Utah in a couple of weeks and doing a pastors conference, pastors leaders conference in the state of Washington in the end of July. So those things are on my mind right now. And so we're keeping busy with regular church life, opening up the church once again, getting ministries flowing once again, and all the meetings and everything that we have to have in order to prepare. So both of us are real busy lately.
Yeah, there was a time when we all know this church, there was a time when that was even scheduled or even on the calendar, you going and doing different conferences and leadership's training for the church. To now see that opening back up is it's a blessing, but then again, it's one of those things where it keeps you busy. Yeah, it keeps you busy.
I had my schedule, my calendar. From people don't know this, but my calendar is actually filled out at the beginning of the year, and so out of the 12 months, very often, almost every month, I'm asked to go someplace and do something. And this last year, especially, we had loaded it with not just one event or one outside thing, but sometimes two events and a lot of traveling. And I'd have been traveling till the end of the year. I think the last trip we had scheduled was in November, and I was going to take December off, kind of like. But with the COVID virus, everything just stopped. And so, from one perspective, Marie and I were sharing with one another that that was actually, in one way, actually good for me because it slowed me down and stopped me from the activity and gave me more freedom to develop my own ministry because I had overbooked myself, to be honest with you. And so that's been a plus, if you will, in the midst of all of this.
Right.
It's been a plus for me and for Marie.
I know even with both you guys' travel, I think I took a glance at your calendar one time and there was like a stretch from Tucson to Israel to coming back, and you guys were even hit the ground running even before you guys went to Israel. How your calendar was really
Oh yeah.
really busy.
Oh yeah.
I think it's the traveling that's the
A lot
hard
of
part, huh?
traveling, out of state traveling. Yeah, we went to Peru.
Peru, that's right.
We
That's right.
got home from Israel, and within 3 weeks or so, we were in Peru. I was supposed to be in Philadelphia. I was supposed to be in New York. So it's a lot of out of state traveling. I had been asked to do something in Florida, and so a lot of out of state traveling, busyness, and so again, it's been actually a blessing in disguise for us, so that we're able to we were able to just focus our attention on our church and our ministry here, and it's opening up again now, as you know, and I'll be doing a lot again. We'll be going, God willing, to New York. I've been asked to do and agreed to do as a member of the Calvary Chapel Council. I've been asked to be part of a pastors' conference in Hawaii. And some people say, oh, you're going to suffer in Hawaii. But to be honest with you, I can't go into the sun.
Right.
So it's not like you're suffering. I thank God that I'm able to do ministry, but it's not what people may think,
Right,
like you're going
right.
to go and lay out We don't do that.
I'm not.
Nobody wants to see us laying out. I promise you, John.
Well, I think maybe it's a time that you may need some help going, and
Well, I
Carrie.
get nervous about harpoons.
I was just thinking that. We're on the same.
Oh, no.
We're on the same page, right?
Oh,
Oh.
with the traveling and all your experiences in travel, both you guys, even in you did a lot of traveling even when you were early on in the ministry, correct?
Yeah, we have been.
You guys done a lot of traveling. So, how would you speak to a couple maybe who's going into ministry, or somebody who's been traveling a lot in ministry? How that can be dangerous in a marriage if there's not enough time with one another. Because was there a time, Pastor, was there a time when Marie wasn't going with you? Was that difficult and challenging for a young marriage?
Yes, there was, excuse me, there were, in the first, when we first began to travel, when I first began to go out from this church representing our ministry as the pastor of this church, I went, for example, to China. I went to the Philippines. I went to India. So I was getting out of the country and going to foreign lands that were not necessarily the safest places to go, and that was a stretch, and that was, I think, a stress for us, for me personally. And I'm sure I can speak for Marie, for her also, because we had small babies. I mean, we had 4 children under the age of 8, when I was starting to travel. And while I was gone, Marie could share about this, but when I was gone, on one occasion, my daughter Anna, her arm was broken, and they didn't want to tell me that they had to put a cast on her. They didn't want to concern me for the welfare of my baby. I was in India and going to the Philippines, and Mama Marie did not want me to be concerned about that. I was in China and going to the Philippines, and she didn't want me to be concerned about that. And so there was stress. There were things we went through. I have to say that my stress was different because Marie was left home to take care of the family, something that we together do, and that she relies on me a lot as a father. And so there were quite a few adjustments. As a matter of fact, John, that's one of the reasons why I stopped traveling for a while. I stopped going out and stopped doing things. I did not want to leave my wife that long, because I could be gone 16 days.
Wow.
I didn't like leaving my wife. I did not like leaving my children. And I had to come to realize that some men are called to do that. Some men have more of a missions heart and personal missions ministry. And so for me, I was impacted by something I read of a minister of long ago, who said, what good is it that I have preached the gospel and seen thousands come to faith in Christ, and my own children, my own sons, are unsaved?
Wow.
And so I read that. I think it was Billy Sunday who said that. And I read that, and I came to a belief that if I can't take my family with me, then I'm not going to go. Or if it's going to be demanding too much time from me, then I'm not going to go. I know guys who have been more than willing to give up their families, give up their wife for what they call as the gospel preaching. When in fact, I think it's, and I'm just going to sound cruel even as I say this, and even judgmental, but when in fact, I've seen it's been more of their desire to be known and well known. So they gave up their family, not for the gospel so much as for personal fame and the things that come with that. Now, I've seen that. And so I made a decision that if I can't take my wife with me, and if I can't take my children on occasion with me, then maybe I'm not supposed to be the one. Because I realized that there are a lot of men called by God who have a great message that's just as edifying and just as encouraging, or more so than anything I've got to say. So that's my whole mind started changing towards where it was at one time, which was opportunities. And I'd say, Mama, I have opportunity to go too. And she would say, whatever the Lord lays on your heart. And she's always been my support. I never went without her support. But I came to realize that my girl was giving up on days that I'll never get back, events that I'll never be part of. And when I began to weigh that, John, knowing that God has an army of men and some who are specifically called to do certain things, that's when I started realizing my real call is to care for my wife and my babies and take care of our fellowship. And that's what I did. And the church had been growing, it was blossoming, and it was blossoming. We've been a mega church, what they call a mega church, since 1989.
Wow.
It's a long time to pastor 2,000 plus people, and that's kind of an unusual thing. But it was growing and growing and growing, and we had full services and multiple services with quite a number of people. But I said, you know what? I'm not gonna lose my family for something that God hasn't really said. This is your call, and I knew I could do these things and should do it, and I still do, but not at the expense of my family to the degree that my ambition gets in the way of my being a dad and a pastor and a husband to my wife. And so if there's any young pastor right now listening to this, or even an older pastor who may have questions related to this kind of subject, I would say, ask God whether you're really called to do that or not, because sometimes it's our ambition that we have and not a call. And you need to know whether it's a call, because if it's a call, then everything works better that way. My wife and I have peace. Our children understand it. I'm able to communicate that call to my kids with a different kind of certainty and encouragement, and the price is paid that we're all willing to at least share in, versus me saying, honey, I'm going to go off to China, or I'm going to be going to the Philippines, or I've been given opportunities to go around the world. And so I just don't do that anymore. If I couldn't take my kids, or if I couldn't take my wife, it just caused me to pray more and more about whether it's me who should be going.
That's interesting, because a lot of times, and I probably haven't seen this as much as you have, is when you can see ambition versus what a call looks like in someone's life. And an ambition can really interfere in a marriage.
Oh, yes.
When there's a quote that you've mentioned to me before about ambition. I don't remember what it was. It's something about ambition.
You're not memorizing all my words? Even when I write them in red? Are you kidding me?
I think the font was too small for me to see.
I think your sandwich is in the way.
I was like, the burrito was in the way, but I couldn't get it. The tacos from Tuesday.
Yeah.
But you had mentioned something that an ambition person can be bought.
Oh, yeah. Let me try and remember. Yes, yes. I was impressed with something I heard someone say. It was actually a character playing in a show of some sort that he was playing Mafia Don, and and he had said, "I am not concerned with the man who is simply ambitious, because an ambitious man I can buy off, I can pay off, but the one who does what he does out of love cannot be bought." And that's true. It's absolutely true. In ministry, I have known, I have known, and I don't say this to judge, because it sounds like I am, but I'm speaking in a ministry as a ministerial kind of way. That's what I'm saying. And him who has ears to hear, let him hear. because I have seen men who make friends with you because you can help them get up
Mm,
that ladder. And once they become friends with you, they go to the person next,
hmm
and then the next, and then until they get to or try to achieve their goal of being something, of whatever that may be. I've seen that. And they leave people behind. And I've been used in that way more than once, John, where somebody, because I was on the radio, because I was well known in certain circles, then all of a sudden I have people who want to be my friend, want me to be on their board, they want things from me. And I was very naive in earlier days, and I used to think they're just nice guys. They like me, and when in fact uh, they wanted what I could profit them. And then once they met somebody that I introduced them to that had more cachet than me, then all of a sudden they're not around, and this other person is
hmm
being sought after. And I've seen that more than once. So, yeah, ambition can be bought off with a position, with an opportunity to quote unquote preach somewhere, to meet a publisher, or get involved in a convention or a conference. And I have helped people. I have helped people who I trusted, whom I thought loved me. I have helped them to get to know people, only to see them kind of just float off into the horizon following their new love. And yeah, you can get kind of soured by that towards people. It certainly sharpens your discernment. It really
Right.
does. And so, yeah, so ambition is there's a godly ambition, and ambition for the Lord, and you can know that's godly because God is going to be honored, and you're going to take the lower seat with joy, like Jesus taught us to do, or you're going to find your way in front, always talking about how many people show up to see you, how many people like you, putting your name in your ministry first so people know your name and not your church. I've seen plenty of that. And as far as I'm concerned, that's just not what God called us
Mhm.
to. So, yeah, ambition can be paid off. But when you do something for love, you can't be.
And even in a marriage, Pastor, you can see that uh, the dangers when a marriage is in trouble and that ambition is taken over for whatever it is, a job title, a position, salary, whatever it can be, that really can blind somebody to how their marriage is in trouble because they've been bought out by that ambition and it can affect the marriage, and so uh, even guarding my heart to make sure that, and you've done really well in pouring into me and be careful with my marriage because that's my first ministry, and so as you share with other pastors, Pastor, what are some of the things that as a pastor that you have guarded yourself against?
There are, and I think Billy Graham made this very famous. There are three basic areas that a pastor, every Christian, but a pastor needs to be wise and to guard himself in. One is pride. A man's pride can be his downfall. If he begins to think that his words are more important than somebody else's words, his testimony is greater, or his communication skill is, or the size of his church.
Mm,
Again, somebody who's always telling me how big his church is compensating for his lack of sense of who he is. So you have to watch your pride. You have to be careful. Well, pride in ministry can also be pride in just your person. It's just been expressed in your ministry. And that I'm important attitude. You can't correct me. You don't know how superior I really am. Haven't you looked at all of my achievements? That is very easy to bring into a marriage. So that your wife, as a man, your wife may turn to you and say, baby, you're changing. There's something going on in you. And then you turn and say to her, what do you know? You don't know my life. You don't know what I go through. You
mm,
don't know the opportunities I've experienced. Who are you to correct me? When everybody's listening to me, fawning over my words, asking me to speak somewhere. And when I go to the office and I look at one person and I say, you need to do this, and they do it. Then I come home and I ask you to do one thing for me, so your pride can get in the way. And so pride will destroy. Pride in ministry, pride also can destroy a family. And then Then there's that love of money, that desire for money. And so in ministry, if you think that you are worth more than you're receiving, then the stress of thinking you're not appreciated, and that has a way of tying in with your pride, but the stress of thinking you're not appreciated and not given enough, that can bleed itself over into your marriage too, where your wife may say to you, honey, can we get a vacation? And the first thing you say is, I don't have the money for a vacation. There's no way we can go somewhere. I don't have any money. How come you're always asking for? And then you start having money problems. I'm not getting enough. I'm doing so much work. Nobody appreciates me. And that can just bleed right on over into your marriage. And then the third, and this has been the downfall of many a pastor, is when the women in the church begin to treat you like you're some kind of superstar, some celebrity, some desirable man. And they fall in love with your message, thinking that, and you get it confused, thinking that they are in love with me. And sometimes they are confused. Sometimes they want to take the place of the wife, and so they'll come up after church and they'll say, I just love hearing you speak, and when you open your heart, it really speaks to my heart. And then at home, your wife has not been showing you the attention that you'd like, because she's got, like in our case, it would have been 4 small kids.
Wow.
And so she's working hard. She's taking care of the home. She's caring for babies. And then I've got some woman, and this has happened here in this church. I've had some woman coming after me, and if I didn't guard my heart, if I didn't guard my home, guard my, love my wife, love my children, there's been more than one woman that would have taken me from Marie. And I don't say that just to say it. I say that because it's true. And Marie's aware. This is no secret
Right.
between us. She's aware of it,
Very aware of it.
and she has, yes, and she's guarded her marriage, and she's guarded me, and but those are the 3 areas, and so I've told the church before. I've told pastors in pastors conferences, and I've said, women can fall in love with the pastoral office and persona. You could be as ugly as a toad, but they still find you attractive. So don't let it go to your head, because the lust of the eyes and the lust of the world, lust of the eyes, pride of life, lust of the flesh, the pride of life. These are things that every one of us go through, every one of us. And so when you begin to advance in ministry and get well known, these are things you have to guard yourself against. But in the home, those are things you should always be guarding against. You don't treat your wife like an object. You don't act as if you're the king of the house. You don't keep things from her. Financially, you have to be aware of all of those things. It bleeds over, because what you are in life is what you are in the pulpit. There's some guys, it's true, who can go up in the pulpit and they just speak a good game, but they've got a wife sitting there who's been ignored or abused, children who have a dad who's different in that pulpit than in the home. And so I've been aware of that. And you could speak to my children, anybody could, and they could ask them, is your dad different at home than he is in his pulpit? And every one of them would say, no, he's the same man. And that's what I sought. I want to be the same man in the home as I am here when I'm preaching a Sunday morning service or Wednesday night, whenever I preach. And I would say that I don't change. I would say that I am the same person, because all my ministry is an outflow of who I am. That's all it is to me. Or you can go up there and have a polished speech, lots of humor and lots of personality and likability. Then you leave the pulpit and you don't even let people near you. You hide in your office and you don't visit with anybody outside. You are never around. Before you know it, you isolate yourself. And when you do that, you get into a lot of danger. You really do.
When somebody is in that situation where those 3 areas have bled into their marriage, how is one to know that their marriage is in danger if they're so blinded by those things?
I think you need to listen to your wife. I'll speak from a male perspective. I listen to my wife, because if there's anybody in the world who loves me, warts and all, it's my wife.
Mm.
My wife knows me in a way that no human being other than my wife would ever know me. She knows my dreams, my losses, ambitions, my sins. She knows me, and she loves me. And because that's true, if she corrects me, I listen. Now, my wife is not someone who's always trying to do that, because she knows better than to try and argue me into a position simply because I'm a man, I'm a human being, and sinful, and I will not hear it if it comes in the wrong way, because my defenses, like anybody else's, will go up, and I'll say, what are you talking about? Just be straight, and I can get upset. So Maria's learned over the years, and she knows how to speak to me, and she knows how to bring a word to me that is important to hear. And I can say this before the Lord, and she knows this. I know she knows this. I listen to her. I will listen to her, because I may not agree at first, because she has a different perspective, and I have to weigh it through, and I have to start thinking it through, like, how's that work, and why do you see that? And I might sit down and say, look, I don't agree with you at all, but why are you saying that? What do you see? And she'll say, this is what I say. And she always does it with such kindness and meekness that my defenses don't go up. And I'll go, you're probably right. You're probably right. Let me look at this. I'll think about it. And then I do, because that's the one thing she knows about me. I will think about what she's saying. I don't blow her off.
Right.
It's, listen, if somebody loves you and took it upon themselves to take the chance of upsetting you, I have to respect that. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. When you have a friend, and like I have in my girl here, I listen to her, because if there's anything my wife has that I don't have, it's goodness. This is a good person. I'm not a good person. I'm a man who's been a sinner, who's still learning what good is. But I have a wife who's good. She's good. You know this, John. You've
Yes.
known her for many years. She's a good woman. I respect her. And because I respect her, I listen to her. And if a husband doesn't listen to his wife, why'd you marry her? Why? I mean, why are you married? I'm not saying get a divorce. I'm saying you better start listening if she's a good woman. And if a wife's listening right now, if you're a good woman, I think your husband ought to listen to you. I think your husband ought to, because that's the two became one.
Right.
You're filling in the gaps of that person, and you fill in the gaps of her. That's how it works with Marie and me. And because the only thing Marie and I have ever known together that has been the longest lasting thing in our relationship, before I was her pastor, I was the guy who taught the Bible study. I was the Bible guy. Not the best teacher, God knows that. I mean, I'm 24 years old or something. What do I know? I'm just learning. I'm not knowing how to communicate yet. I'm just learning. But she sat there patiently under me and listened to me, literally sitting right here next to me. I would sit in a chair similar to what you're sitting there, and Marie would sit literally right here. For years, she would sit right here,
Not
right
anymore.
there. She can't get
I won't
up.
Those
Help
days
me
are
up,
way
honey.
gone.
In a beanbag chair.
I remember those
Right.
beanbag
Yeah.
chairs. They had those little
Yes,
things in them. Remember those
Yeah, the
little
beans,
little
yeah.
beads? Yeah,
Yeah, I liked them.
they were comfortable, and just can't get up from them anymore.
No.
Exactly.
Pastor, in with that as well, you've always mentioned to me, and that if you want to see the condition of someone's marriage, just talk to the wife,
Yeah, she just needs to be there when I'm talking to the husband.
and you would get a good sense of it. How is that, Pastor? How does that work?
There are some things that you learn through experience. I can never really teach people to have eyes to see. Um, and the way my mom trained me as a little boy, which is all my life, and it's gone on for all of my life, from the time I was little, is my mom would teach me to watch people when we speak to them. And she said, just keep your eye on them and watch them. Their faces will give away.
Hmm.
And it's true. There's some people that you can't read, some people, but those whom I can't read, I don't trust. because I know that they're hiding something just by the fact they're not responding and they're staying like this. So that person I've already zeroed in on, this person's hiding something from me. Something's going to come up later on, and you learn these things. My mama would point this out. My mama used to look at me, and if I were talking to you and say, Marie, just like this right now, and if we were talking, you know, my mom would look at, and I'd be hearing Mama's where Maria's, and I'm talking to you. My mom would talk to you, and and I'd be looking at you. And then if you started responding in a certain way, my mom would actually bait you with something. She'd say something to you to watch how you'd respond. And I learned that from her. And then she'd turn to me and she'd go, and then she'd nod like this, and she'd make her head like this. She'd go, but I knew what she was doing. The other person didn't, because she'd wait until they were looking the other way. But she would do that. She would look at me and she'd go like that. So I learned from the time I was less than 4, 5 to read people. So I would watch them. I watch them. And that's just what I do. I think there's a discernment in it now. It's a spiritual thing now. So yeah, if I'm talking to a husband and a wife, their body language tells me so much in the conversation. I watch them. There are things that you've done counseling for a long time, John. You tell me what happens when you're with a kid, and if you move your hand by his face kind of quick sometimes, and you see that move, you know that someone's hit this kid or someone is hitting him.
Yeah.
Just by your movement towards them, and you pick it up, and that's what happens is you learn to watch people's response. You learn to watch them. If I say something to them and I'm speaking to them, I might say, "Man, you're such a friendly guy." I might say that. What a friendly guy you are, And then the wife goes, and I see that face, and I think, "Whoa, we got us a problem here."
And you kind of baited them in a
Oh, I'll do
sense.
that when I'm
Yeah.
starting things. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're so patient. You don't have a temper.
You see the wife go,
You'll see the wife. They always do. Even the guy will. If you watch them very closely, and you were taught this probably in your counseling techniques, watch their faces when you speak. You can see them nodding in agreement
Yes.
or going. You can see that. And sometimes it's imperceptible to the untrained eye. But in counseling, they teach
You see
you
that.
to watch their face, because
Mhm.
you'll see it. And that's that nonverbal stuff. You learn that. Well, again, I've been doing what I do for a long time. And the times I've been deceived are the times that I have refused to believe what I'm seeing. And there have been times when my wife, more than once, has said to me, "I don't think you should trust that person,"
Wow.
when I have trusted them to my own hurt. And again, she has her discernment, because to the pure, all things are pure.
Mm.
And with Marie, she's got such a pure heart. She can pick up things that I might be making excuse for. And she'll say, and she does it in a nice way, by the way. She doesn't, I have to say it, even in the way she says things, I have to say this. It's true. She'll just go, like that, "Honey, I don't know," and I know that she saw something. "What are you seeing? What are you seeing?" And then she doesn't even want to say it.
Ambition.
She'll say, "I see ambition," yeah.
And you do see that sometimes, Marie, right?
Oh, yes. Ambition, selfishness, no respect for the wife. Not that the wife doesn't respect the husband as well, but I've seen an awful lot. Indifference. You look at the children, and you look at the children, and they don't have any hope. It seems, or peace. It's
Right.
peace that they miss
Hmm.
when the parents are at each other. You see you can tell when a parent, when these poor little children are left with no peace, and no joy in the home. When there's a husband and wife who can't get along as believers, and it really is a disgrace, because as believers, we are to put our spouses first, in the sense, I am, I love my husband, um, and my heart is to please him, and a wife ought to want to please her husband, and he ought to want to protect her.
Yes.
To protect her. My husband will protect me as a man.
Of course.
And but oftentimes it's more selfishness that's involved in the home. They're battling one another, the husband and the wife, rather than seeing what they could do together as believers, and how they can work with their children and love one another, and not be indifferent. There's so much selfishness in the world. It's crazy. And we have a God who laid his life down for us, and we need to lay our lives down for one another. And truly, as for my husband, and he for me, and I know he would. I just see that there's just a lack of so much in the world today. It's stressed. People are stressed, and women and men are not. If they have problems with one another, they're not going to be intimate with one another, or maybe one will be used one for another. I don't know, but they won't have that intimacy that they need to have as well. So
That's important. That when you're saying that, Maria, I was just thinking about, there can be times in a marriage that I've seen in even in counseling where instead of understanding the unity and the teamwork and the oneness, that the gift that the spouse provides to make at least myself complete, instead of seeing it as a competition or seeing it as selfishness, as you mentioned, there's such a beauty and unity in the marriage. There's so when the wife's able to speak, even as the Holy Spirit speaks and speaks wisdom in our lives, sometimes our wives play that role in terms of they speak that wisdom into our lives, and that there's so much unity and love versus dissension and chaos and anger and selfishness. It's just so refreshing when there's that unity. When my wife comes around, you guys, I tell her, hey, make sure that we pretend that we're happy, because Pastor David's he's gonna see right through us. So make sure you're happy and hold my hand. And no, just joking. But instead of having that dissension and that disunity, it's so refreshing to have that unity with one another, to see that there's truly a gift in our marriages, versus being so blinded in our marriages because of selfishness, of ambition, that we don't really see our wives or husbands, for that matter, in the light that Christ wants us to see them.
If you don't like your wife, if you don't like your husband, what's the point?
Right.
that's true.
We made a decision to marry. Marie had options. Marie could have married a better man. I have no doubt in my mind, because she's a good woman, and a good woman has a tendency of drawing a good man, and me, I couldn't have gotten anything better, but I'm honest about that, because I've told her this. I've said, baby, you could have had someone so much better than me, but she chose to love me, and that humbles me. That humbles me. It makes me realize that out of all of the guys in the world, she wanted me, and so that was just my imagination. Remember that song? Out of all of the fellas in the world, she
Yes.
belongs to you. Well, there's truth to that line, because, and I've told her this when we first married and all. I mean, John, you got to picture Marie was just graduated from college. She's got a degree. She's a hard worker. She's very diligent at what she does. She's a good person. She's a beautiful woman. She's got everything that I would want. And for her to say, I'm willing to take this adventure with you, to have nothing. I was in Europe. I went to Europe in '75 when I was 24. Yeah. And while I was in Europe, she got mad at me. But I'll tell you why in a minute. But when I was in Europe and all, I wrote her a note, a letter. On occasion I wrote her just to keep her interested. And I wrote her and I told her, Marie, I've spent all my money because I had saved in the army. I had saved money up, and then for a year I had saved money so a friend of mine, Nikki, and I could go together, and we backpacked Europe for 3 months. And so I wrote her and I said, Marie, we're not going to be going on any dates. When I come home, I've spent pretty much all of my savings. And I'll never forget, she said, I don't need to go out on dates. Anything with you is going to be fine with me.
Wow.
Now, that's the woman I married. I married her shortly after. Now, I'll tell you why she was mad at me, because I got married to her shortly after getting back from Europe. And she said, we could have gone on a honeymoon.
I thought about it.
Instead, you went with Nikki.
I thought about it. Wow.
He paid his own way. I'd have had to pay her way.
But it's so sad to see all these people fighting with one another and bickering. And like I said before, just instead of showing that they could have a good marriage to their children's not going to, all they're going to remember is that my mom and dad were always at odds with one another. And that's really a sad thing to pass on, because it will be passed on, most assuredly, on to their children. And anyway,
in ministry, there are kids who will not follow God because of what their parents were like. They don't want anything to do with God. They'll say, if this is the God they worship, I want nothing to do with them. We've seen that more than once. They don't go to church. They want nothing to do with serving the Lord. They think the Bible is not worth reading, because they watched where that father and that mother didn't love Christ and love one another. And so again, we've been aware of that. We've been aware of that, Marie and I. Not to say that we've been even good parents. I can say Marie's a great mom. Me, I don't know that I've been a good father. I've tried. My kids know that. But I can say this. I can say that the only thing that matters to me, I said this just this last week, people may not believe it's serious. I'm serious when I say this. The thing that matters is they serve God.
Amen.
That's what matters to me. That really does. And they know that about their father. And over the years, as I've grown older, and Marie and I together have grown older, we've never changed. We've never veered the course. We've never changed it in any way, never compromised that. I've never given them the impression that it's not worth doing. And I talk to my kids about ministry a lot. It's part of our life together. And I share with them about things of the Lord, and that's been our life. And we do it with our grandbabies when given opportunity. So I think that marriage in and of itself, and speaking of marriage and service, marriage and ministry, my first call is to be faithful to God, but I'm also called to be faithful to my family, And I had a dream many years ago that was so real I thought it was. And in my dream, I had committed adultery. And it was a dream. In my dream, I had committed adultery. I say that 3 times.
In pastor's dream.
It's a dream. Because people are hearing he committed adultery. But I, in my dream, committed adultery. And I had to tell my wife. Then I had to tell my children, who were young, they were small. And then I saw myself speaking to the church and watching the faces of the people, watching her face as the pain that I saw in her that was so real. And to see the look of my baby's eyes, because my boys, my kids, they worship their dad. They love me, especially my sons are real loyal to me and want to be like their dad. And I watched their eyes. I watched my girls' eyes in the dream. And then I stood in front of my church. And you know how dreams are. It's just all like bang, 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 just photographs. But John, I woke up with a chill. I woke up with I had never had such a vivid dream in my life. and I don't believe I've ever had one like that since. I took it as something from the Lord. I did. I took it as something God was saying, this is what will happen when you have to tell your wife, when you have to tell your children, and when you have to tell your church. This is what you would destroy. I saw it. I, and I didn't have an inclination. You know, I don't have that. Thank you, Jesus. I just don't. You know, when it comes to loving one woman, my dad was that way, and he gave that to me. And I would have been this way had I never even gotten saved, because that was the model I had. My father loved my mom till the day he died, and I would have done the same. I know I would have. I would not have been an adulterer. I was a one-woman man before I got saved. It's only more so now because I have reasons to be that I didn't have before. So I don't understand people, and I don't mean that in the I'm so good and you're so bad way. It's just I was not one who ever had to formulate reasons to love a woman, reasons to stay together. Oh, I love God. I want to be in the ministry, therefore I should. That isn't me. Had I not been saved and had I not been in the ministry, that was a value that I was given by a father who was very, and your daddy was the same way, that was a value that we share. Faithfulness to the end. Faithfulness to the end. And so I don't know. Not everybody has that, John. Not everybody does. I don't know why I would have gotten married to a woman that I would have contemplated divorcing. Why would I marry somebody that I'm not going to stay with? Why would I waste my time and my money, my life, pouring into somebody as an experiment? I just am not that guy. No, it was an all or nothing. It's all full commitment to the end. That's it. I once you're in, you're in. And that's not a negative. It can
Right.
sound negative. No, that's my mindset. I'm that way with this church. I'm that way with relationships. I'm just that way. And Marie's the same way. Marie's the same way. There's David and nobody else. You know, David dies, it's nobody else.
That's right.
There's nobody else. And if Marie goes home to be with Jesus, there's nobody else. I already had what I wanted. There'll never be anybody else. That's me. That's us.
That is us.
Yep. And that's why the church is safe. That's why it is. And that's a qualification of ministry, a lover of one woman. That's what we are. And that's Christianity.
Yes.
That's Christianity. You know, till death do us part. She's wanted to kill me, but so far we haven't parted. She wants to part my head with a hatchet, you know.
No. Never.
No, maybe a
Pastor, as
board.
we wrap this up, and Marie, what are some practical ways then, as we are Christian marriages, to safeguard our marriages?
I can only tell you what we've done, and I guess it's practical. We have independent relationships with Jesus. She does not rely on my faith, and I do not rely on hers. We influence one another. We encourage one another. But like I told her when we first got married, and it's been true since then and all the way to now, I said to her, and you may remember, I said, Marie, I can't live for Jesus for you.
That's right.
I can't have faith for you. You have to have your own faith. All I can do is provoke it, encourage it, and try not to ruin it. So guard your walk with God. Have an independent walk with Jesus Christ. What has made our my marriage good, our marriage good? And I speak for us. I know it has. I can say this. Put in the Lord first. Having your time with Jesus. And loving each other the way Jesus said to. He said the husbands were to love the wives, he said, and to use his model that he laid down his life for his sheep, you know, to wash them with the water of the word, you know, to cherish and nourish her. That's I've had to learn to do that. As a young married guy trying to become the leader in the home, I had the wrong idea of what it was to be a man. you know. I brought that in from the world,
Mm.
and not from my dad, by the way. I brought it in from the world. I thought, well, just be hard. Don't show emotion, you know. Marie can tell you that. What you see now isn't because I'm just an old man, has gotten tender in his years. That
Mhm.
doesn't happen naturally. You actually become meaner in the years if you're not softened by the Spirit. No, what happened is on a personal level, I I just don't want to make her cry. I just don't want her to be hurt by me. That's what made me love her. I'm going to cherish her and nourish her. I'm going to protect her. I'm going to be there for her. If nobody in the world will stand up for her, I will. And if nobody cared about her, I will. And that's true. And she knows that.
Mhm.
Her heart safely trusts in me,
Do.
and mine safely trusts in her. So what has made us? Our faith in Christ,
Yes.
our service to God, our keeping Him in the forefront of everything, in all relationships, and everything that we basically do. Our home is a place where Jesus is still Lord,
Mhm.
not just in the sanctuary here, but in my bedroom, every room of the house. He's the Lord. And we have over time learned that He's the Lord of these things too. He's the Lord of everything. And so I can't tell people do these 12
Right.
things or 15 things. There are books written that you can find people's suggestions, but everybody being different, I'm not one who can do that. I'm just not good at that. People think that, oh, that's your specialty. It isn't. My specialty is exegetical Bible studies. That's what I do. But from my heart, you're asking me about relationships. I value this woman. She's my life. She is everything to me that I need. I want nothing else. I have no desire for anyone else. I want her happy. And if I can make her happy, in life, I'll do whatever it takes. And I spoil her, because she deserves it. She's putting up with me. She's
Mhm.
given up a whole lot. She puts up with me, you know? And why wouldn't I spoil her? But the blessing about my girl is she's not a materialist. She doesn't need material garbage. What she needs is this. That's what she needs, and that's what I need. So I picture one day we're just going to be, much older now, God willing we are, and we're going to be hobbling down the street holding hands,
It's true.
and people are going to be saying, "Isn't that sweet?" But we're going to know we're just helping each other not fall.
And
We're holding
also,
each other up.
Marie has the eye for jewelry and shopping. So when we go to
I do.
when we go to
I
Israel and
do.
I want to get something for my wife,
I do accept
Marie,
some
what?
things.
She likes some things.
Really, I do.
Marie, help me find something for Livy, and yeah,
I
you're
sure
pretty right
will.
on.
I sure will.
And she'll even teach Livy how to make salsa.
Yeah, I
She
sure
cracked
will.
up at that
And
last
I
week.
will definitely teach her how to make
Oh, that's
salsa.
funny.
I'm sure she can.
You know what? What's really given our marriage has been a blessing in our marriage is that my husband puts me first, and I try and put him first too. I know we had kids, and they get in the way sometimes, but it's true. But putting each other first and respecting one another. Respect is a big thing in a marriage. If a woman's not feel respected, then or a man isn't respected by a woman, it can destroy. It will eventually destroy their whole foundation. Um, and I think it's so important is respecting and loving each other, because from respect you can love um, and encourage one another in good things, in the good things of life,
Mhm.
and rather than putting your husband down. I've seen people put their husbands down, and it's embarrassing for me to hear that, but so much more for the man to hear him be belittled. by a woman. And so I learned my mother and David's parents respected one another. My parents respected one another. And I'm thankful that they gave us that foundation of respect, because oftentimes in this day and age, they are, many couples are not doing that. And they want to go elsewhere to look for love.
Thinking it's going to be better,
Better.
right?
And it's not. You know,
Right.
it's not. And the children see their parents living this way, hurting each other. And these children are devastated.
It's like a life, it's a scar that's in their life
Mm-hmm.
for their entire life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's been said, and I think it's true, because you see it in Ephesians 5, you know, where Paul says that the wives, you know, are to respect their husband.
Mm-hmm.
You know, husbands, love your wives. But he doesn't say, wife, love your husband, which I find that interesting. You don't find in the New Testament a command by Paul or any of the writers to a woman to love her husband. Now, I've had people say, well, wait a minute, the book of Titus, you know, the older women are to teach the younger women to love their husbands. No, how to. It's an older woman is a mentor to the younger to teach them how to be a lover, how to be a homemaker, how to be that. It's no command for the older women to teach the women to love, but how to love. You know, because the men are commanded to love. Husbands, love your wives. That's a command. Why? Well, one, in the Greek, in the Gentile population, it wasn't necessary to love this woman. It wasn't a necessary requirement, because the Greeks had wives to bear their legitimate children, and they had lovers to give them pleasure. And yet now you've got these Gentiles coming into the church, and Paul has to teach them. And he has to say, husbands, love your wives as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. What's he saying? Well, Jesus said, greater love has no man than this, than a man lay down his life for his friends. And who's your best friend if it isn't your wife? And so what we need to do is we need to exercise the things we see in Scripture. But the wife is simply told, I think 3 times in Ephesians 5, the last portion of it, I think it's 3 times that the wife is commanded to show respect to her husband. You know, and Sarah in 1 Peter is used as an example of a woman who showed him respect and even calling him Lord. And she had a godly fear, which is a reverence and respect for Abram. You know what I'm saying? And so what Maria's saying is 100% practical, because she can tell me, oh, baby, I love you. I love you. I love you. But if she speaks poorly about me in front of somebody, if she mocks me, speaks down to me, she calls me a name in front of people or myself, just me, you know, you don't love me. That's the first thing a man's gonna do. What do you mean? I tell you I love you all the time. You know, I had your children, I make your meals, you know, I clean the house, but you treat me with disrespect. Well, until you're respectable, I don't have to respect you. Oh, really? Well, you're supposed to treat me the way Christ commanded you to, not according to your standards of what you think. And when am I going to be that man? You're never going to find your task done, because you're going to constantly work on me until I die. So either you let him do the work or you get in the way of the work. But you got to learn to show me the respect that I should have. Now, I, as a husband, should be worthy of respect. There's no doubt about that. But if my wife is going to convince me that, as a man, that I'm the person she cares for, it's the way she treats me. It's the respect she has. And again, you know, people may get tired of hearing this, but it's true. My wife respects me, but I want to be respected. I want her to. So I've made up my mind. There's not going to be a man on the face of the planet, Chuck Smith, my pastor included, that she's going to respect more than me. I made up my mind that out of all the people, she will respect me. And you know what? She does. And that's just a work of the Spirit. That's a determination on my part. And I think that's what any man who lets his wife speak to him that way needs to sit down with the wife and say, baby, let's deal with this. If you're angry at me, let's deal with it. But there's got to be ways that we can communicate that don't demean. And if I'm demeaning you, show me where, tell me how, I'm listening. But baby, when you speak to me, because you and I have seen more than once
Yes.
where we've seen someone say, oh, he, and we see that, and it makes me
So
uncomfortable.
uncomfortable, isn't it?
You know, I'm
Just,
thinking,
really is.
you don't speak to him that way.
Yeah.
Oh, he understands. He's okay. And I say, no, he doesn't feel like he's valued at all. And what you're doing is and we've seen him divorce. We've seen it. You gotta love one another. So a woman is to respect her husband, and the man lays down his life for her.
It's interesting you point that out about in Titus also, and in Timothy where it talks Ephesians, where it doesn't instruct the wife. It instructs the wife to respect, but we're the ones that, as the men, to love our wives as Christ loved the church. Everything else will flow from there, right? And so,
So true.
yeah. Well, you guys, thank you so much. I think this was a good conversation. I appreciate your wisdom and your practical wisdom and insightful wisdom to our marriages. It's needed, especially in a time as today, where we've allowed so many different things to get in the way of our marriages, and even the dangers in ministry where our wives can be neglected. And so, thank you guys. I did you want to close saying something to the church, as we normally do?
Well, you know what? There are some chairs here that are asking you to sit in them.
That's great.
We miss you, and I know that many are concerned. We are too. We're doing the best that we can to make this a very safe place. And if you're not coming simply because you're lazy, then let me encourage you to come. If you're not coming because of your age and health requirements, we completely understand and support you in that. But if it's simply because you have gotten used to sitting in front of the TV with a cup of coffee and you're remote, that's probably not the best reason not to be in a church service. And so we miss you. We love you. Like to have you with us, and I hope I see you on Sunday.
Thank you, church. God bless you. We'll see you on Sunday.